Hi, everybody. It's Ms. Salazar, and welcome to Science. Today is February 16, 2021, and the topic for today is environment for living things. Now, right now, I'm showing you guys three different types of environments. We have the ocean floor, the desert, and the forest. Now, the ocean floor has the fish and the coral reef. In the desert, we have camels, we have scorpions. Let's see, we also have snakes and other types of lizards, right? And then we have the forest. Now, depending on where the forest is located, you could have deers, bears, you could have owls and other kinds of birds, you can have frogs and toads, and a bunch of different other kinds of animals. But again, these are just three different types of environments. Now, by looking at these environments, it's important for you to understand and to remember that an environment is going to have living and non living things. Now, a non living thing are the things in an environment that do not breathe, they cannot grow or move. So they are literally non living, they are not living. Now, a living thing are the things in an environment that breathe and move, they can reproduce and grow. Now, remember, an environment is going to have two things, living and non living thing. Okay, so they're going to have both of those things. Now, I want you guys to go to page 181. You see the essential question? It says, how do plants and animals need one another? So, this is a question that we're going to be thinking about as we read the pages, as we go through the textbook. Now, looking at the picture, we have a bat, and it looks like the bat is drinking or eating something from the plant. I think the bat is drinking that really sweet nectar from plants. Now, where it says engage your brain, look at the paragraph. Read the paragraph with me. This bat drinks from the plant. How is the bat also helping the plant? So let's see. The plant is actually giving the bat food, right? The plant is offering the bat food, and the bat is drinking that sweet nectar from the plants. But how is the bat also helping the plant? Well, the bat spreads the plant's pollen. Remember that we talked about that in the last lesson? This was actually question number one from the bonus in your test. So the question was about how pollen moves from one plant to another. And a lot of you guys said that wind, insects, and animals help that pollen move from one plant to another. And you guys are correct. So in this case, the bat is helping move that pollen. The bat helps spread that pollen. So I want you guys to finish that sentence by writing this on page 181. And then I want you guys to write the three vocabulary words where it says active reading. You're going to write environment, food chain, and pollen. Those three vocabulary words. Now remember, this is a recording. You guys could stop. You could go back if I'm going too fast. I'm going to move on to the next page, but you can always just stop the video so you can have time to write the vocabulary words. Now on page 182, it says in your place. By looking at the first paragraph, it says plants and animals use living and non living things to meet their needs. They get the things they need from their environment. Remember, an environment is always going to have living and non living things. Now let's see. All the living and non living things in a place make up an environment. Now, do you guys see where it says active reading? Read the sentence where it says active reading. Find the sentence that tells the meaning of environment. Draw a line under the sentence. So, you're going to go back to the paragraph, and I want you guys to underline the sentence that tells the meaning, the definition of environment. What does environment mean? What is an environment? So I want you guys to draw a line under the sentence. Now, do you guys see the last sentence in this paragraph? It's underlined, and that's because this sentence tells the meaning of environment. So, an environment is basically all the living and non living things. So, remember that an environment is going to have living and non living things. Both of those things make up the environment. Okay? They are super, super important. Remember, An environment is always going to have living and non-living things. You cannot have an environment without living things or without non-living things. They need to be there. Now, by looking at the pictures on page 182 and 183, we have zebras. They're drinking some water. We have a really big, beautiful tree, some trees and bushes on the back. We have some rocks, other zebras. Now, let's see. Do you guys see that first yellow box over here? It says plants and animals need water. So both plants and animals need water. That is something that both of them can find in their environment. Water is a basic need for both plants and animals. By looking at the second box, it says plants and animals need air. Air is a basic need for plants and it's also a basic need for animals, right? So that is another thing that both animals and plants can find in their environment. Let's see, by looking at the third box, it says plants need sunlight to make food. Animals find food in their environment. Remember that sunlight is a plant's basic need, but it is not a basic need for animals. Animals don't really need sunlight. Plants are the ones that need sunlight, and plants need sunlight in order to make food. But here is the question: if animals don't make their own food, how can they find, or more accurately, how can they eat? Right? If they cannot make their own food, how can they eat? Let's see. Well, animals eat other animals, but you also have animals that eat plants. So that's how they eat. They can't make their own food, but they can find their food in that environment. So they can find their food right there where they live, either by eating other animals or by eating plants. Now, by looking at the last yellow box, it says plants and animals need space to live and grow, which is very true. Both of them need their own space in order to get bigger and to grow. Animals find shelter in the environment where they live. So these zebras, they can find shelter underneath a tree, right? Now let's see, by looking at the last box, this white box, it says, what do both plants and animals need from their environment? And we talked about that, right? We mentioned that. So we said that water, air, and space are just one of the things that animals and plants can find in their environment, right? So, water, air, and space, those are the things that both plants and animals can find in their environment. And I want you guys to write those three words on page 183. There you go. I'm going to the next page. Remember that you can always just pause and go back because this is a recording. Now, on page 184, it says getting help. Let's see. It says animals use plants to meet their needs. Many animals use plants for shelter. Some animals hide in plants. Other animals live in plants or use them to build homes. Now, do you guys see where it says active reading? It says a detail is a fact about a main idea. Remember that the main idea is going to be what the paragraph is really talking about. Now it says draw one line under a detail, draw an arrow pointing to the main idea it tells about. So, by looking at the paragraph, I want you guys to find the main idea and I want you guys to underline the details that tell about the main idea. So, by looking at this paragraph, you see that basically almost the entire paragraph is underlined except for the first sentence. And that's because the first sentence is going to be the main idea. Animals use plants to meet their needs. That is what this paragraph is really talking about. How animals use plants to meet their needs. Now, after the first sentence, it tells you details about the main idea. It tells you details about how animals use plants to meet their needs. So I want you guys to underline these sentences and I want you guys to draw an arrow pointing to the main idea. By looking at them at the details, it says many animals use plants for shelter. Some animals hide in plants. Other animals live in plants. So it's telling you different ways that animals use plants. We know that they use plants for shelter, and it's telling us that they use those plants for different kinds of things, for different types of shelters. Some of them hide in those plants, others use those plants, right? Other animals live in those plants. They live actually inside of the plant, or they use the plant to make their homes, to build the homes. Now, If we look at the owl is building, or the owl actually built its own home. So an owl finds shelter inside of the tree. An owl finds shelter in a tree in that hole. A lion hides in the tall grass. And actually, a lion hides in tall grass when the lion is going to hunt. So the lion is going to crouch down and he's going to hide in that tall grass because he doesn't want the other animal to see him. Now let's see. A panda eats bamboo, right? So a panda eats plant. This is the food of a panda. And then we have that ants find both food and shelter in the thorns of this tree. In the thorns of this tree. So ants, they use the plant to do what? To do two things. They use the plant to find food, and they also use it for shelter. Now, by looking at the second paragraph, it says, animals need to breathe air to get oxygen. Oxygen is a gas in the air. Remember that we talked about oxygen? We said that plants make their own food, and that process is called photosynthesis. Now, when plants make their own food, right? When plants make their own food, they're going to give off oxygen, and we need that in order to breathe, right? This was actually on your test, it was part two, and it was oxygen. So, oxygen is a gas. You can find it in the air. You can't see it, you can't grab it, but it's there. And we need that in order to breathe. And plants, they give off oxygen. Now, some animals use plants for food, right? Like, example, the panda eats the bamboo. And some animals eat animals that eat plants, right? So we have animals that are going to eat other animals, and we get those animals eat plants. So it really just depends. um let's see. So right here on the white box, it says write another example of how an animal uses plants to meet its needs. So for example, a cow eats grass. That's one way an animal uses plants. A bird uses twigs to build a nest. That's another way that an animal uses plants, right? Just like the owl. The owl uses the tree for shelter. The lion uses the grass, the tall grass, to hide in it when it's going to hunt. So I want you guys to write an example of how an animal uses plants to meet its needs. That's going to be on page 185. And then I'm going to go to the next slide. Remember that you can always just pause or you can go back because this is a recording. Okay, so the needs of plants and animals. We're just going to mention a few of them. Now, the needs of animals. So, they need food from other animals or plants. So, it really just depends. Some animals like to eat other animals, and some animals only like to eat plants. But they find this need, they find the need of food in their environment. They also find water and space in their own environment. Now, plants, they need sunlight, water, and space, and plants find these things in their environment. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example of a living thing in an environment. Let's see. What's an example of a living thing in an environment? Plants. Plants, right? They are living things. They reproduce, they breathe, they grow, they move. That's a living thing inside of an environment. And then what about an example of a non-living thing in an environment? An example of a non-living thing, something that does not breathe, something that does not move or grow. Let's see. Air, right? Air is an example of a non living thing in an environment. So, air is going to be an example of a non living thing in an environment. And we have tons of other things. We have tons of other non living things in an environment as well as living things. Okay, so this is actually really fun. You guys have this game in LMS. It's called Monkey Isle. So it's just recognizing living and non-living things. Okay, so you guys have the link in LMS. You guys can play this, and there's also more games. So you can play Ready for Freddy to review about living and non-living things. And you can also play the memory match to review about animals and plants. So you guys also have the link to these games in LMS. And you guys also have a video, really cool, fun video on LMS. So I want you guys to watch how Coyote Peterson that's Coyote Peterson, how he catches a spider in the desert of Arizona. So, the desert of Arizona, that is just another type of environment. And in that environment, Coyote Peterson found a tarantula. So, you guys have this video in LMS. Now, this is going to be your assessment. You guys have the vocabulary cards, and this is what you're going to do. Number one, I want you guys to write the definition of environment, and you can find it on page 182, and you're going to write the definition right here. Then, you're going to draw two different types of environments, and you're going to color it using your coloring pencils or your crayons. So, in the second vocabulary card, you're going to draw two different kinds of environments. And I showed you guys some examples of environments. Now, in the third vocabulary card, you're going to write all the non living things plants and animals need in an environment. So think about what you can find. Go back to page 182, 183, and look for clues in the pictures. I want you guys to write that down. List all the non living things plants and animals need. And then for the last vocabulary card, it says list the living things animals need from the environment. So I want you guys to list the things that animals need from the environment. Okay, what do animals need from the environment that is a living thing? And I want you guys to write it down. So that is going to be your assessment. You do not have to turn this in, it is not worth any points, okay? But that is what you are going to do. Remember that you can always just go back. You can hit pause, you can always go back because this is a recording, so you can go back and try to listen to the discussion more closely. But we will be discussing these pages on not Wednesday, on Thursday, okay? So I'll see you guys then. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Bye everybody.